this student was, I think, in 6th grade at the time, and just saying, oh my gosh, I had this in primary school back in China. It's so easy. It's so boring. And it was just really interesting for me to go and look and say, oh, what are you doing? And not knowing the different levels of when certain math concepts are taught.
African netizen just asked me, is that a bet?
Yeah, those are some stereotypes.
I
Yeah.
think
yes.
that is the rumor comes out.
Yes, it's some stereotypes. You know,
Yes,
they
that's
usually say,
unfortunate. Yeah.
Chinese can eat everything. And I said, no, please. That's not true.
Hey yo, pack your bags and follow the tracks. Open your minds and try new things, man.
Hey there.
Welcome to Hangzhou Youthcast.
We're here to bring you the coolest stories.
Listen to the ideas of international youth.
Coming to the realm of global youth cultural exchanges.
It's Hangzhou Youthcast.
It's Hangzhou Youthcast.
Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel and welcome back to the Hangzhou Youthcast. I'm Fan, I'm today's MC, and last time we just talked about some phenomenon of the TikTok refugees go to the Rednote, but we still have so many things didn't talk about, like the cultural background and also the stereotype things. And so today we also welcome back Kevin and Eric. Can you do the introduction to the new audience again?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having us back. Again, my name is Kevin Noe. I'm from the United States, currently here doing a PhD in China.
Thanks, Fan, for having us again. I'm Tungamira Eric Mpona from Zimbabwe. I'm doing my PhD at Zhejiang University in International Affairs and Global Governance. Been in China for 7 years.
Yes, welcome back, and let's talk about more deep things and also the culture things about the TikTok refugees and also Rednote, and also your experience on the Rednote, and also you experience about and intercultural things in China.
Sounds great.
The TikTok refugees, they learn Chinese. Yes. Just maybe for how they want to communicate with the Chinese netizens on the Rednote, but actually they can talk in English, but they all want to learn Chinese. That is why you think that.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. That was a very interesting phenomena. Because they had an option to just, talk in English.
Yes.
And then especially even after the application had the auto translation. And that the Chinese users, if you don't understand the language, you could just switch it on and then the English content would be translated to Chinese. But they still opted to go and learn Chinese language on those platforms like Duolingo and many others. I was seeing the videos of them, and they would actually also post that kind of content on Rednote, trying to learn the language. And I think it was because they felt like, okay, well, we have seen through our engagement that sometimes our misunderstandings are coming from the fact that we have this information gap that is in between us, and getting to know the language is actually one of the ways to unlock that. It's a key to unlocking that information that will bridge the gap between the two of you. So I think that's what happened there, and it was more like fun for them. Just trying to learn a new language is interesting. Even if you are not going to get a very deep understanding of the language, just knowing how to greet people in that language, that's how globalized the world is today. So before I even came to China, maybe I was actually just trying to know a few words, ni hao, and then I feel like, oh, well, that's interesting. The same way that if you go to any place here in China and then someone asks you how to say this in English, you teach them that word, they'll be very happy, like, oh, that's how you say it. So I think that's what happened with those TikTok refugees there. It was a very interesting opportunity for them to at least know a different language. Yeah.
And I think part of it is the positive reception that they've received, right? You're coming into this new platform, which is mainly, Chinese language based, and everyone there is so welcoming of you, yet, and they can all speak English, and you don't know a word of Chinese. I'm sure a lot of the individuals that were coming to Rednote were going, well, let me learn some Chinese now. And of course, the United States historically has not been fantastic in terms of language education. So it's really exciting to see now people pursuing language learning, and specifically Chinese language learning, which just hasn't been highly available in the United States.
I would say this is a very interesting phenomenon. I've realized that when it comes to intercultural communication or cross-cultural communication, language then plays a very critical role. Since 2017, whilst I'm in Hangzhou here, I've been doing a lot of volunteer activities. So in 2018, one of my friends invited me to go to this one local community that is in Shangcheng district there. And we went there, and this community had a very interesting class. And this class was for old people who were trying to learn the language, English.
Oh,
Wow.
really?
They were
English
trying to learn
corner.
English. It was an English corner for the elderly. And I was there asking a question. Like, most of you are 60 something years old, some even 70. Why do you want to learn English? And then they said, okay, Hangzhou is so internationalized that there are a lot of foreigners out there. If you go out and then maybe on the road you meet a foreigner, if you can be able to say a few words with that foreigner just to communicate, I mean, that's more interesting. If I meet you on the road, Eric, and I'm going to say, hi, Eric, how are you? And then we can exchange a few words. I think it's more interesting. So cutting back to the TikTok issue, to the Rednote issue, I think it's almost the same thing. That I mean,
Yes.
that phenomena of you trying to speak someone's language, it makes those people even more happy about it.
Yes,
Like they'll
yes.
feel like you have some respect
Yes.
to our language. You have some
Yes,
respect
so
to
true.
our culture.
Yes.
So it bridges the gap between the two of you. Yeah.
Yes. So the respect, I think, is for each other. If you respect
Mutual
us,
respect,
and
yeah.
we will respect you. I think
Yes.
that is the point. That's why the phenomenon is really friendly on the red note, and also I think it's also the same the offline and online in Chinese.
Yes.
Chinese phenomenon. Yes.
And to use the term Eric just said, I mean, we're seeing so many bridges being built right now between
Yes.
U.S. and Chinese culture, and it's very, very positive, and a lot of mutual respect, and of course, a lot of that comes from just basic language learning or interest, curiosity around the other
Yes,
person
yes. Yeah.
and what your life is like, and just the exchanges there have been.
Yes, there's also the curious about the life. There's a word about the 对账. It's just
对账, yeah.
like checking the bills, and we will talk. The American people will ask and how much you will buy these things, and how much is your education fee or something like this, and the Chinese people will answer and also will also ask them. So I think that is very interesting because we don't have the channel to know this information before. All the information we get is a second-hand information. It's just heard by the other people or the other agencies or institutions, but we don't ask for the true people live there. So how do you think about the phenomenon that like the checking the bills? I think it's a cultural bills.
Yeah, and I think it's really great in that it's breaking down maybe some misinformation that exists. And I'll speak about it from the U.S. side. Is what we're seeing is so many Americans who were previously maybe ignorant to the way things were happening in China or what China was like today. Are learning so much more about it. And that's what we've seen in the news now is Americans coming out and saying, oh my goodness, listening to our government or listening to what I had learned in perhaps in school or other locations, I just had no idea what China today was really like. And through these kinds of interactions and seeing daily life and seeing the kind of the culture and, just cityscapes or prices or the availability of technology, they're learning so much about a place that they didn't know much about before. And for my previous work working with Confucius Institutes, that's what we were trying to do, is really try and educate and open people to these ideas. And yet this kind of accidental phenomenon that's happening by trying to ban TikTok has done so much more of educating a greater population around what China's really like today.
True. I totally agree with Kevin there. Because what I think is most of the exchanges in between the West and and China has been happening through the media most of the times, and information through the media has always been having its limits because it is trying to share a certain narrative, and these interactions on the Red Note, they are down to earth. Like you can literally ask anything that you want. But I mean, if you are going to search right now on Google, on any web browser, searching for certain information, about maybe, let's say, about the US, right? Maybe you might not get complete information about it. You say some information about Zimbabwe, you don't really get to know what the people there are thinking about their country, how are they living, their livelihoods and everything. The same applies to China. You are going to search about Hangzhou, you don't really get to know what Hangzhou is up to. I mean, how are those who are, let's say, maybe in the rural areas of China, how are they living their lives? I mean, their infrastructure and everything. But now on Rednote, I mean, you are getting what I think is more like a down-to-earth engagement that provides that information, in-depth information to you right away. So I think that's the uniqueness of it, and that's how it also helped to clean some stereotypes that were existing between both sides, right? Because maybe some Chinese users had also certain stereotypes towards the Americans, and also some American users also had some stereotypes towards the Chinese. But that application and that whole phenomena of having these TikTok refugees coming to the Rednote helped to clear the air. And now I think we can even see more and more mutual understanding, if I could say, that came through that whole phenomena. So I think it's very interesting, yeah.
Yes.
Very much agree.
Yes, I think the stereotype is actually a very difficult things between the culture and the culture communication. So I think that is also a good way to break the stereotype because we can talk to each other directly, not through something.
Yes.
That is a very good point.
You don't want to have a medium. I mean, straight right away from point A to point B. You don't need something in between.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's what we're seeing happen, that direct person-to-person communication. And it's really, I think, breaking down so many barriers and breaking up a lot of those stereotypes that existed before.
Yes. Do you have some stereotype for Chinese and China before? And what time are you just to change the stereotype about that?
Well, I mean, it's hard for me to think specifically of one that might have existed. It was so long ago before I came here. But
You're just
Let me start. Let me start.
oh,
then.
you want to start?
I will start.
Oh, I was going to say, I could speak to one that exists on Rednote now.
Yes.
And that's about the exchange of homework, right?
Oh, yes,
and
actually.
math versus kind of the English language homework. And, you know, that I think is a very common stereotype in the United States that China and East Asians predominantly have much better math abilities than
Yes.
those in the United States. And that is a stereotype and something that we need to break down. And certainly stereotypes can have very negative impacts. However, I think there's also some truths to it. If we're looking at global math scores, generally East Asian countries do score better than the United States. I think
Yes.
the US, unfortunately, is seeing math scores drop. And I have a fun anecdote. When I used to run the Confucius Institute at a university in the United States, one of our professors who came from China brought her 2 daughters with her. And so while she was with us for 2 years, the kids got to go to American schools. And it was a really fun opportunity for them to, you know, acclimate to a new environment and learn a new system. But I specifically remember one day, one of the teacher's children at our office doing their homework and just complaining about how easy the math homework was. This student was, I think, in 6th grade at the time, and just saying, oh my gosh, I had this in primary school back in China. It's so easy. It's so boring. And it was just really interesting for me to go and look and say, oh, what are you doing? And not knowing the different levels of when certain math concepts are taught. So not trying to reinforce any stereotypes here, but just saying there are times when it is interesting when you can find some specific truths, which is maybe why we're seeing so many people asking for math homework on Rednote.
Actually.
yeah. So I think it is like this. Like there's some truth behind it to a certain extent.
Yes.
But not to generalize that everybody is like that. I mean, a certain percentage of the Chinese people have that ability to really solve all those complicated mathematics problems, and we have seen it on the Rednote. But then it can't be generalized to say everybody is like
Yes.
that. So, I mean, for me, maybe not really very close to our conversation today. When I was in Zimbabwe, I used to think that I think almost all the Chinese look the same. I mean, I think that happened in Zim. Most of the people say, they look almost the same. And until I got here, and then you actually start getting used to it, and I'm like, no, these people look totally different. And the same thing, some of my Chinese friends used to say also think that I think when I look at Africans, I think they look almost the same. Yeah, and then until they because they were seeing me every day, now they oh no, that's not the case. So you see, stereotypes sometimes the only way you can solve them is that actually to have I mean person-to-person communication interaction. I mean, having these down-to-earth engagements, I think that's the best way to solve
Yes,
it. Yeah.
it's very important.
Yes, I think people will more believe in the things that they see and also they listen directly because
Seeing is believing.
yes,
So there
yes,
is a Chinese saying that by Wenpu Ruijie, right?
Yes.
Like hearing it, seeing it once is better than hearing it 100 times. Yeah.
yes.
Tune into Hangzhou.
Discover the world.
Hangzhou Youthcast.
So as for the maybe some articles, just I will more on this. Believe in if something I just talk with my also African friends and South American friends, I will more believe in their own experience. I think the truly things as experience and they talk to me. I think that's true. But something maybe we all see in the article and also in the videos, they will maybe be modified or maybe it's part of the truth. We don't say that it's not the truth. Maybe it's a part of the truth. So that is cause the stereotypes of the. I think on the internet it was more severe on the internet.
Certainly. And of course, it's all subjective too, right? So listening to one individual, just like listening to me, you're receiving my subjective truth.
Yes.
And so having that broad context, and that's the power of social media, is you're able to engage with so many different individuals and receive so many different perspectives that you can then come to your own conclusion around what truth is. However, I do agree that this kind of person-to-person communication can be better than, at times, mass media, depending on what you're trying to learn, but specifically around culture and stereotypes and what the lived experiences of people on the ground in certain, cities or countries or cultures is like. You're able to see that more clearly through these kinds of applications.
Yes, and also the math abilities is also the very true stereotype, and also
Well, what? No, I don't. Let me clarify. I don't want to say it's a true stereotype.
okay.
We can generalize, as Eric so succinctly put, right? And look, I had mentioned, broad math scores, or my specific anecdote was meant to be amusing, but we don't want to generalize that to the entire population, right? So let's clarify that.
Yes.
We're
Yes.
breaking down stereotypes here, not reinforcing them.
Yes.
yes, and I think this is
Just like there is also another stereotype that you usually hear when you're out there, because we have seen a lot of Jackie Chan movies, and everybody be like, "Oh, that's some kung fu." I mean, all the Chinese people can do some kung fu, and then you get here and you're like, okay, so can all African people play drums?
yes,
Actually, those are some kind of stereotypes. So it's true somehow that a significant population of the Chinese can do kung fu, they can do the tai chi. You go out there very close to the West Lake, you see the old guys, they are there stretching and doing the tai chi and everything. But then that doesn't mean that everybody in China can do that. Same applies to the case that I was saying, that for Africans, you might see that Africans love dancing, the Afro beats, they love playing the African drum and everything. I can play the African drum, I can dance, but it doesn't mean that all
Yes.
Africans can do that.
and also maybe that's because if you can dance or if you can play drums, if you are good at math, you will post it on the social media.
Yes, of course.
But if you don't, I can't dancing. Maybe I won't put the videos about it.
Oh yes.
Right.
This
Yeah.
makes some sense. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
So at the end of the day, all the videos that you are going to see from the Africans or maybe from Zimbabweans, right? Let's just say Zimbabweans. From Zimbabweans,
Drums.
maybe they are just playing drums and you're like, oh, you Zimbabweans can really play
And
drums.
then reinforcing those stereotypes. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's in part the algorithm and what it's showing you, but the communication. That's one of the magical things that's happening on Rednote. Is it's not just the consumption of videos and content in that way, but it's the discussions that are happening down in the comments section where people are talking to one another and the language and cultural exchanges. So I think that's where we're seeing a lot of the the really interesting intercultural communication happening.
And this is where the uniqueness of the Rednote is. That it goes beyond the videos that you're seeing.
Yes.
There is a deep conversation that is happening. Because even some will ask in the comment section after seeing someone, maybe you are doing some Tai Chi. Oh, so all the Chinese people can do this. And then suddenly those young people are ready to respond in the comment section. No. Even myself, I can't do anything like that.
Yes.
So it goes beyond the videos, the content that you are seeing.
Yes.
There is more of a conversation. More importantly, the conversations that are happening on that platform is what matters.
Yes.
Actually, I just come up of one thing because I also create my Rednote account during the TikTok refugee phenomenon.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So now I have some thousands of the followers, but most of all my followers are foreigners because I just shoot some videos about the Chinese delicious food and also Chinese travel. So one time I just shoot a dried duck. Maybe you have something like that because Chinese people like to dried meat.
Yes.
Especially during the Spring Festival. So there are some dried ducks, just a hen on the hen on it, and just African netizen just asked me, "Is that a bat?"
Those are some stereotypes.
I think that is the rumor comes out.
Yes, it's some stereotypes.
Yes, that's
usually say,
unfortunate.
Chinese can eat everything. And I said, no, please. That's not true. These are
Because
some
we also
stereotypes.
heard the rumor that some people will say, "Oh, Chinese people will eat bats." Oh, that's so ridiculous. So maybe that is why come out because the dried ducks hen on the rack is so like a bat on the videos. Yes.
I will say for a lot of US viewers, though, that might still be very interesting content because I would say maybe relative to other cultures around the world, many Americans have a rather tame diet. Not as maybe diverse as what we see in other places. And so, prior to coming to China, my food selection maybe was very limited. Whereas coming here, I mean, and it's, I think, a very positive component of Chinese culture is you're not wasting, if we're specifically talking about animal products, parts of the animal, right? You consume the whole thing. So in a way, it's, very protecting of the environment in that you're consuming the entire thing and not wasting it. So, I think that is an interesting. So duck maybe is not as commonly consumed in the United States. Other fowl or, especially internal organs, which here, I've learned to greatly appreciate. There's a lot of very, very tasty delicacies.
Yeah. And I think that stereotypes about saying that maybe Chinese people can eat everything, it comes from the fact that you were saying that you have a lot of options here. That Chinese people, the same chicken can be prepared in various ways. So one guy was telling me that you see these potatoes that you are seeing, we can make a whole meal out of potatoes. We have fried ones. We have, different ways of cooking potatoes. So now that means that you have a lot of options, right? Today I can eat it differently. So because of that fact, then people will end up thinking that why do they have a lot of dishes like that? These guys, they just eat anything that they see, but that's not the fact. It's just that, as he's saying, that a duck, someone will take out the tongue, the feet. They are sold separately, and you might even buy them as snacks. So it's actually very interesting how things are done here, and that's also some information that we have seen on Rednote, that people are, through the content sharing, especially let's say about the food, they are managing to remove those stereotypes and actually to clear the air, and people end up to see the real stories behind all these stereotypes, because behind those stereotypes there are some interesting facts behind it. And this is what people are beginning to understand. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's all relative too, for an American citizen looking at, some of your content or other people's content around food, they might make certain assumptions based on their lived experiences. And now you're really broadening their horizons and providing them information. But the flip side's also been really fun as maybe Americans are posting about Chinese food that they're consuming in the United States learning that, oh, this isn't very authentic. This is kind of our own thing here, right? I think I saw trending like no more, well, I won't mention any specific chains, but no more specific, fast food chains of Chinese food because, I mean, it's debatably not authentic Chinese.
Yeah.
But it's its own thing. You can appreciate it for it being its own unique kind of Americanized Chinese food.
Chinese food.
Yes, actually. Yeah. And there is a video very popular on the Rednote. I think is an old lady from America, and she's almost crying, but she said just that no one cares about me in America, but there are so many people just very far away in China just care about me, and they will ask me what are you eating today. So she said that it's very 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 moving. Yes, but I think it's a very, very good point about that. And also the phenomenon that writing to Li Hua is an activity also created by the netizens. Because maybe you know that in the Chinese, when we learn English, when we learning to writing the articles, writing the letters, we will assuming that we have international friends and we are Li Hua and we will write the letters for our international friends. Yes, but there's actually the international friends on the Rednote. They will reply the letters to Li Hua. I think it's reply the letters to the every Chinese people. Yes, how do you think about that?
Well, I mean, living in China for so many years, where English has for such a long time been a compulsory part of the education, right? Students have to learn English. They might not have many opportunities to have this direct kind of language interaction with a native speaker. And so, having been approached many times by individuals just wanting to practice their English, I'm always happy to chat and, here's a really neat opportunity where you're seeing such a broad option to actually write and respond to those letters that are truthful. You're creating a pen pal or something more than that with video components and other interactive abilities. So I think it's in terms of language practice and acquisition so powerful. But as we've been talking about, the cross-cultural communication and learning and sharing experiences is just it's really fun to see, and I'm sure it's exciting for people that are actually learning English or interested in learning the language, and vice versa for those international users that want to learn Chinese now.
Yes. And I think after I watching these videos, just I feel is full of emotions about that. Maybe the moving and also the happiness. It seems like we just try to communicate with the international friends many years before, maybe 10 years before, but we finally got the feedback. That thing is very happy for us.
Yeah. So I think it was very interesting, and also that some foreigners, right? They were looking for some of their Chinese friends that they've had interacted with before, but they don't know where they are. They were like, okay, I'm looking for this person, and then post on the Rednote, like, I'm looking for this person. And they ended up finding those people, and it was very interesting, isn't it? So I think, as you are saying, that I think both sides have been trying to look for an option to really get into this engagement. For you guys, I mean, you're looking for some international friends, as you're saying. I mean, for those who are also in other countries, they've been looking for ways to also have this cross-border communication. I mean, whereby you don't have any barriers, right? And you feel like the people that you are communicating with, they are respecting you, you are respecting them. There are no barriers here. And there is this mutual respect that I'm talking about. So I feel like, Rednote came up being very handy to provide the platform for both sides to interact, which is what we saw happening.
Yes, I think the demand is always there. People from different countries are always longing to talk with each other, but the Rednote just actually be the channel for now.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's just so great how it just happened accidentally, right? I mean, it just by sheer circumstance, this has now been the kind of catalyst for this massive cross-cultural interaction, and so it's exciting, and hopefully it continues.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's actually very interesting, not being intentionally done.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
being something that just happened accidentally.
No marketing or
no marketing.
Yes.
I think that's actually what makes it even more interesting.
Yes.
Yeah. If there was some marketing behind it, maybe you would it is because somebody marketed it.
Yes,
somebody
yes,
poured a lot
actually.
of money into this thing, and then you start hearing some theories coming out now that it is this side that is trying to make sure that there is something like that being happening. But really, this just happened out of no preparation, out of no plan, just accidental. And that's actually what makes it interesting.
Interesting and genuine and authentic,
Yes.
right? And I think that's so
Yes.
important.
Yeah.
So what is the biggest takeaway for you from the Rednote?
I'll just say kind of what we were just discussing, that we're now having this massive intercultural conversation between so many of these refugees and individuals that have been on the platform for a long time. And it's just creating new conversations and new understandings. And I think bringing groups of people closer together, which is so important in a world that's becoming smaller and smaller. And so I think this has been a very, very positive accident, right? It wasn't purposeful. It wasn't marketed in a specific way. It happened. And I think it's going to have a lot of benefits moving forward.
I think my key takeaway is that globalization is happening very fast, be it cultural, economic, or technological, whatever you may call it, different types of globalization. I think what we have saw on the Rednote is actually this kind of very globalized world where nobody can stop the trend, that people are ready to communicate behind the borders. And the young people are now playing a very critical role, especially the Generation Z, which I think they have common language. When I say common language, they have almost similar preferences in terms of their taste of the content that they are seeing on the internet, the kind of lifestyle that they live in. I mean, take a look at the Chinese young people today. Take a look at the American young people today, Zimbabwean young people today. We have almost the same preferences in terms of what we are looking for out there, our fashion taste and everything. So we are now in a world whereby we need to understand that despite our diverse cultures, we also have some commonalities, and those commonalities is what bridge us together, just like what happened on the Rednote.
Beautifully said.
Yes. Do you think that TikTok refugees now come to a Rednote? Will they go back to TikTok because the TikTok is unbanned now? Do you think they will come back or they will stay on the Rednote?
I mean, I think realistically, yes, a lot of individuals that move to Rednote certainly will go back to TikTok just because it is a larger platform and they've invested a lot of time in it and understand that system, or for those that have their business or livelihood through that platform. However, I think anyone that does stay is net positive, right? So the more people that we see stay on Rednote, I think it's a really beneficial, occurrence coming out of this, TikTok ban situation in the United States. So not all will stay. I think some will stay, and that's great.
Yeah, I think I almost agree with Kevin there, but I have something a bit different there. To say that, I mean, I can have Facebook, I can have Instagram at the same time, I can have X, right? So you can have TikTok, you can have Rednote at the same time.
Yes.
So if you want to sell your stuff on your TikTok, you go on TikTok. If you want to interact with your Chinese friends, you go on your Rednote. So there is no conflict here. So I think they will exist in both the two platforms, provided they have the time to do so. But definitely, I think the experiences that they got on Rednote are worth staying there.
Yes.
Yes. And
You're far more optimistic than I am.
yes. And to be honest, we also very welcome all the TikTok refugees and all the netizens from all over the countries can stay not only on the Rednote. I think it's just a platform that we can talk to each other, we can communicate each other, and we can understand each other. That is the point that we want to stay on the platform. It's like a global village on the internet.
Yeah, global village. I think now the conversations will have to go beyond the Rednote. That means that besides the application itself in our daily life, let's have those down to earth conversations happening. I mean, these authentic exchanges with no barriers, with no stereotypes. I think beyond the red note, that's what we want to see happening.
Okay, yes. Thank you very much for the Kevin and Eric to participate to our conversations about the phenomenon of the red note. I think it's not only the red note, it's actually the intercultural background, just beyond the red note and this phenomenon. So today we are just talk about the TikTok refugees and also the phenomenon on the red note, and also talk about some deeper cultural conceptions about it. So thank you very much, and thank you for all the guests and all the audience to participate to our conversation today. And welcome to our Hangzhou Youthcast. And next time we'll talk about a very popular called Ne Zha. Have you seen that?
Oh, yes.
I've seen the first one. I haven't seen the second one yet.
I've seen both of them.
Yes,
You have more time to get out.
Yes. So after you watching the film, and we can talk about the very popular globally film Ne Zha 2. And see you next time. Welcome to Focus on Us, and welcome to participate to our next episode of the Hangzhou Youthcast. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.